This is a 2015 BMW X4. And it's a very simple car. You see from the front, it looks like an SUV. So it's an SUV, right? Simple. Well, yeah, simple, except from the fact that it's actually a hatchback with this electronically openable liftgate. So it's a SUV hatchback. Simple, right? Well, it is very simple until you take a look at this sloping roofline, and then you realize it's actually an SUV hatchback coupe. So at least that's simple, right? Well, it is that simple until you realize that this car has 4 doors. So now we're up to 4-door coupe SUV hatchback. So that's pretty much as simple as this car gets. So we could say that this is a very good car for a person who doesn't know what they want out of a car. Or we could say that this is a perfect car for a person who wants a very nice looking, well-built, quality, decently fast, and very spacious car, all in one, but they only have one garage space for it. And this would be the perfect car. It's like the Swiss Army knife of cars. Anyways, today we're gonna take a look at its quirks and features, and we're gonna take it out for a spin. So let's get to it. Okay, before we start the video, I just want to thank today's sponsor, and that's you. So thank you so much for getting this channel to 300 subscribers. And if you want to be the 301st subscriber, you can do that below the video. So thank you so much, and let's go on to the video. Okay, so X4 F26. This car was the first generation of the X4, first time they introduced this kind of body style, mid-size coupe, 4-door SUV type thing. And this car really is an all-rounder. It does it all. One of the best things about this car is you can think of it as a mini X6 from this generation, or you can think of it as a coupe X3 from this generation, or you can think of it as a jumbo-sized 4 Series Grand Coupe also from this generation. But the reality is that after the E71 X6, BMW really saw how this coupe style is really starting to take off, and it was very popular, so they made it in a smaller size. And it really is nice. It looks very nice. And honestly, I know at first glance it doesn't look that nice, but once you get used to it, it's really, really beautiful. I mean, the practicality of having an SUV and also the looks of a coupe, it's just a great combination. And the thing with these cars is you probably won't see a lot of X4s on the road. They're very rare cars, and it's a very niche market. Okay, so starting off the quirks and features with the key, you can see it's pretty much a normal F-Series key. And if you hold down the unlock button, it's gonna start to roll down all 4 windows. And this car has a sunroof, as you can see above. So it's gonna start opening the sunroof as well. And this is a very cool feature, especially on sunny days like this. It's very hot outside. And to be able to open up not only your windows, but also your sunroof, it's very useful to circulate air and let some heat escape from the windows before you actually get in your car. As you can see, this car has a black interior, so you can imagine it's very hot inside. Okay, so now let's do the door sound test. This car also has a pretty good door sound. Let's hear it. Very hefty. I like it. It's very nice. All BMWs have a really nice door sound. And once we get into the interior, you can see it's actually very nice in here. There's this M Sport steering wheel with this very soft leather. I've never seen leather this soft and this durable. And once we get into the interior, you can see that there's just not a lot of amenities here. This is kind of an older version of iDrive, definitely not up to the new standards. And it's a smaller screen. You can see this space right here is where the bigger screen would fit. Right here, you've got pretty much the standard iDrive control. Very interestingly, this is not the F30 3 Series control, but the earlier E control. So for example, from the E89, the E89 has the same control like this, which is very weird what they didn't include the F30 controls, but it doesn't really matter. Honestly, this infotainment isn't missing anything. It's got Bluetooth, and it will probably have everything that you need. One of the nicer things about this car is that it actually has keyless start. So it doesn't have keyless unlock. You still have to press the unlock button, but you can start it without inserting the key anywhere. You can see that I just started the car and the key is in my hands. So what happens if your remote loses battery? Then you can just put it right here, and the car should start right up. So you don't have to worry about that. Now this car has the shift pedals where on the left you've got minus and on the right you've got plus. And this is, I've explained this in another video, but this system is kind of a bit more difficult to use. It's definitely not hard to use, but this is one of those things where it's good to know. Okay, so now this is something that I really want to cover, and that is the room in this car. And right now the front seat right here, the passenger seat, is moved way back, like way back from where I would sit normally. And you can see I'm pretty much 6'2", I don't know, 185 centimeters, and I still have 3 centimeters 1 inch. So I'm pretty comfortable in here, and honestly you could probably fit maybe even 3 people here if you have a smaller person in the middle, or maybe even 3 larger people if it's for a shorter trip. So this is definitely a great car, and the fact that it's a coupe doesn't really take away from the SUV-ness of the car at all. Okay, so one last thing I want to cover is of course the tailgate or the hatchback. So it opens electronically, as I previously said, and it's actually very roomy in here. When we're talking about compromise from X3 to X4, you know, you're cutting off the roofline basically. It doesn't make that much of a compromise unless you're carrying huge loads on a daily basis. This won't be a problem for you. And even if sometimes you have to fold down the rear seats, which are 40-20-40 split, by the way, so each one of them is individually foldable. It's very practical, and it's not that big of a sacrifice from the X3. Another really cool thing is the tailgate is electronic, and I didn't really appreciate this until I had to go back to my E39 and actually open the tailgate. And just that process is, you don't think about it, but it's so luxurious to have an automatic tailgate. It's so nice. So this is the part of the video where I would kneel down on my knee pad and start talking about the models. I'm not gonna do that because I forgot the knee pad. But as you can see, this car has no model designation. Usually they would be on the side right here next to this M badge. This particular car is a 20D, X-Drive 20D, as opposed to the X3. All of these cars were X-Drive. X3 had some rear-wheel drive models. This is all-wheel drive. This car is a 20D. It makes around 190 horsepower, something like that. 2-liter diesel, 4-cylinder. And for diesels for this car, there was a 20D, there was a 30D, and a 35D. And for petrol, there was a 20i, 28i, 30i, and then an M40i. Now, one thing to note with these cars is that in this generation of the X4, there was no M model. There was no M model, but later on when the new version came that replaced this, the G version, there was an M model with around 470 horsepower. And the most powerful engine that you can get with this car is probably around 350 horsepower, the M40i. So if you really want the power, if you really want the extra 130 horsepower, then I suggest just going for the newer version and getting all that horsepower. Personally, I don't think you need it. This car is very adequate even with the 190 horsepower engine, so I don't really think it's necessary. But if you really care about horsepower, if you really want to have some fun, then of course you should get the newer model. I'm just saying it's not that big of a deal. So obviously this car also plays into the off-roady aesthetic, even though it has no business being an off-roader. And you can see that by the 20-inch wheels that it's currently running and these very low-profile tires. The car is kind of harsh with these low-profile tires. The car also has a set of winter wheels that are 18-inch and that have a bit of a thicker sidewall, and with those tires you really can't feel any bumps. It's like you're riding on air suspensions. So if I'm buying one of these cars, I would consider you know, what kind of ride I like. If I like harsh, then I would get the 20-inch, make it look better. If I like a bit softer, then I would get the 18-inch, and maybe 19-inch would be kind of the perfect middle where you have just enough sidewall so it's comfy and just enough sidewall that it's very planted to the ground. All that being said, I have to say this car really does look great. The color of the car is great. The fender lining being the same color as the car is also great. The wheels are great. The black grille is great. It really does look nice for a car that's now, what, 7 years old? Okay, so now it's time to start the car up and see how it sounds. But before I do that, I just want to let you know that this car has an aftermarket exhaust. You can see it has 4 tailpipes. This is not stock. This is Remus exhaust again. And you probably wouldn't see any of these cars, the X4s, with the quad tailpipes. I do believe they only come with one version. It's very unusual to see, especially on a diesel. So keep that in mind when you hear the sound. But now let's hear the sound. Okay, so starting the car up. And now let's give it some revs. Now this car doesn't really have launch control. I believe the more powerful versions do, but let's do a bit of a launch here anyway, just to see how it looks like. So. Anyways, that's how the car sounds. I think it sounds really nice, especially for a 2-liter diesel. And now let's just get in it and let's do a test drive, see how it drives, and I can give you some comments about the driving experience. Okay, so BMW X4 driving experience, let's talk about it. I really like how this car drives. This car is really nice, especially when you consider that it's an SUV and it's also a coupe and it's also a hatchback, it's also a 4-door. This is like the perfect car. It's all in one. And then when you counter in the ride quality, and also when you counter in how good the car actually is, I'm talking about the fact that even though this is a 2-liter diesel, I really like the fact that it's a 2-liter diesel. It doesn't use a lot of fuel. The average consumption is probably like 5.7 liters to 100 kilometers. You really do get everything with this car because it's so versatile. You get the high riding position, you get the feel that you're in an SUV, but you also are using fuel like you're driving a compact, and at the same time you're also driving a car that looks like a spaceship. I think it really looks nice, especially for what it is. Of course it's not going to be fast because it's like a 1.8 ton car. It does definitely have to move that weight, and that's a lot of weight to move, but the thing is, it's really not that bad. If we're talking about the 20D model specifically, I think it's perfectly adequate. I don't think it's underpowered. You won't be doing any races in this thing, you won't be doing track days, but the commute to work is going to be really, really nice with 190 horsepower. Even though it's only a 2-liter diesel, it does actually sound pretty nice, especially with the exhaust that I mentioned before. But right now we're about to be coming on the bridge. I'm going to lower down the windows and we can hear the turbo. I'm going to put the car into Sport Plus mode. Now Sport Plus mode turns off the traction control, and usually that's a big deal, but the thing is, this car doesn't really have the power to make a difference. So let's hear it. It's crazy. Okay, you know what? I've used crazy too much. We need new adjectives, but it's superb. It's superb. The turbo sound is immense again. I really like it. I think for a 2-liter diesel, you can't get a better thing. And in some countries, it just doesn't make sense to get a car with a bigger displacement. So I think this is, for many markets, a really, really nice choice. You get the styling of a really nice car. You get speed. You get the sound. Okay, so you saw the smile on my face right there. I don't think there's more explaining to be done. This is a really nice car. And the steering is very light on this car, but it tightens up in the sportier modes. I don't really use the sportier modes. I think the car is pretty much the same in all of the modes. Honestly, probably the more powerful cars have some differences. This one is pretty much the same in all the modes. But in the sportier modes, the steering kind of tightens up. It's definitely not hard to steer. It's just very direct, and that's what I really like. You would expect that this car is kind of wavy, kind of goes all over the place, very bouncy, very wobbly, but no wobble. It's just very planted on the road, especially with these 20-inch wheels with the low-profile tires. The car feels very planted on the road. There's no floatiness. Another thing that I want to mention is when we're comparing the engines, obviously the 20D is going to be the most common model in Europe, especially. But in other markets you might have other models. So what I think is that the 190 horsepower minimum is very adequate. But I do think this car would be a lot more fun if it was petrol or gas. And I think you could have, because here it doesn't really make sense to shift gears because you don't really notice the difference anyway. The torque is there always, and the 8-speed transmission you can get in this car is so smooth. And because the red line is so low, you really won't be making a difference by switching the gears. So you should best leave it in auto. This car comes in with an 8-speed automatic, which is really great, as I said, or you can get a 6-speed manual. I don't think you should get the 6-speed manual. Even if you get the 35i, the 40M, or the M40i, you shouldn't get the manual. This should be an automatic car. I just don't think there's a point. But I definitely do think there is a point in getting one of those petrol cars with higher displacements and higher horsepower. I think it could be very fun, and you can press the downshift paddle. You can hear the burble, you can hear the popcorn. It would be very addicting and very nice. Anyways, bridge again. Let's pop down the windows and let's see how it sounds. I'm gonna put it into manual mode. I'm gonna lower it down so you can really hear it. I hope you could also hear there when the transmission shifts and how the shifts really go in this car. I think they go really smoothly, especially when the car handles them. It's a really good transmission, like the 8-speed. One of the last things I want to mention with this car is that there's a lot of wind noise, especially with the sunroof. And the thing is, it's a hatchback, so the back compartment isn't separated from the cabin, so you're going to get a lot of noise coming in from the sunroof because obviously it's an open panel. I mean, even when it's closed, it's there's still a hole there. It's just covered up, and You also have a huge panel in the back, which is the tailgate, and you can hear a lot of wind noise. At 130 kilometers an hour, 80 miles an hour, you're gonna hear a lot of wind noise. You probably couldn't even talk to the person next to you normally. That's without music, and you would have to shout. So that's one thing to consider if that's a factor for you, wind noise. This car does have a lot of wind noise, probably because it has the aerodynamics of a brick, honestly. I know it looks really stylish, I know it looks really nice, but the aerodynamics just aren't there. But yeah, that's if I had to choose a downside for this car, that would be it. What else is there to say about this car? Personally, I plop it down into Eco Pro mode. It's kind of like a fuel saving mode, and I just don't look at it. You know, this car is very fuel efficient, as I previously stated. It has an auto start stop, which I really like. I know some people dislike it. You can disable it. It's very useful when you're at a traffic light. You don't really need your car to be on, and it's all about, you know, enjoying, especially with these fuel prices, right? You can actually enjoy driving the car because you know it's not going to cost you a lot. So yeah, in summary, it's a really, really cool car. Jack of all trades, does everything well. It could very easily be a commuter car if you get the diesels, or a very, very fun car if you get the petrols. I really, really enjoy driving it, and I think it's a very cool car to own. You don't really see a lot of these on the road. They're kind of rare because not a lot of people dig the whole aesthetic of the four-door coupe, and they don't really know if it's going to cut down on the space in the back. But trust me, this is nothing like that. It doesn't really cut into your space, and it's just a better looking version of the X3, if we're being honest. Yeah, I really, really like it. All right, so that was my review of the X4. I give this car a 10 out of 10 as well. I know I give that to every car, but I really like this car. I think it's really nice, and I think you should get one if you're considering it. So thank you so much for watching my review, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.